All right. Hello and welcome to week 7. Sorry, my PowerPoint is missing a few things. This was not my original, but I did add to it. This week, we're talking about the importance of play, which is something I love. See, I should have added, but I didn't. So before we start, I know that this is not an in-person class, but I do want you to take a minute to think about what is your first memory of playing? What were you doing? Was anyone playing with you? What materials were you playing with? Just take a minute to write down your thoughts. Um, gosh, I'm a bit older than many of you, I imagine. So for me, I try to think about, okay, maybe when I was in preschool, I do remember playing with blocks. I remember um, a lot of playing teacher, of course. So seems like I had an idea of what I wanted when I was younger. But yeah, I'll give you about 30 seconds to write, and I'll stop talking. All right, let's move on. Keep this information beside you, thinking about our own play experiences. Um, you might start to draw on what were you learning during those experiences? What do you think was the purpose? Because that'll help you understand why this is so important. So, what is play? Play should be child directed. It should be enjoyable and spontaneous, right? We should see smiles on children's faces. Sometimes they're doing things that are just to amuse themselves. Sometimes it's others and that amuses them. And there are behavioral, social, and psychomotor rewards. So, a common one, if you're playing with a cause and effect toy, is, ooh, I press this button, there's an effect, right? That's more of a behavioral. You learn that a certain behavior results in that reward. A social reward might be, oh, I share this um, toy with a peer and they'll share something with me. Um, Psychomotor is a little more difficult. It's more talking about the rewards. I'd have to look into that a little bit more. So, what are the benefits of play? As we can imagine, play usually requires movement. So, we have lots of practice to engage in gross and even fine motor skills, coordination, cognitive. This play really enhances cognitive or supports a lot of cognitive development. We're working in our working memory. And sometimes when we're playing, we're also building on things. There's lots of language development because if we're playing with peers, we're trying to work cooperatively often to either share the same materials or create the same thing. We make connections with people based on our interest. Peers. I definitely found in my preschool classrooms, a lot of my students loved the building area, so that became my biggest area. And it definitely enhances problem solving skills, especially social play when we're trying to work together and we're like, how do we make something fit? There's cooperation, collaboration, and problem solving. Play can build autonomy, so the ability to kind of make decisions and do things by yourself and confidence. You make choices while you're playing. You might, in a preschool, again, an early childhood classroom, there's typically a range of materials. So you're having to decide which material is most interesting to me right now. So you might advocate for yourself in a situation to use a material to make a certain decision if you're working cooperatively, or again, with peers trying to decide who gets to use certain things, how do we build something, who gets to place something on top of another thing. I always think about blocks and building structures. Um, Importance. Play is fundamental. We need it. There's a very famous quote by Maria Montessori, play is the work of children. And that's a fact. the more, and especially risky play, which I'm probably going to build on this next week when we talk more about language and social emotional development. That's why I thought this particular slide deck fit here, because we can work on so many different skills during play when we're talking about social emotional and language development. But one of them too is the more there's this idea of risky or dangerous play, where these days regulations and parent concerns and worries, we have our youngest children playing in extremely safe places, which is good and bad, because then our children never really understand how to deal with these dangerous situations and assess risk. Social emotional competence, right? Because we're typically plays involving other people. So we learn how to, one, typically regulate our own emotions to enjoy the play we're engaging in, or to ensure that people want to play with us. And, intelligence, cognition, because we're doing a lot of problem solving. Sometimes play involves creating something new that no one's seen, and trying to use language to describe what we're doing. So I have some videos that I think really help us understand how play can be very important. STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and math, which has become very important in schools, and now we're bringing it down into our early childhood classrooms. Here's how some early childhood or younger classrooms are including play in what seem like more academic areas.
This is called a funnel. A funnel. What's happening? Because we emphasize STEM in preschool, my students are able to build on their confidence levels when mastering science, technology, engineering, and math. They're able to explore and observe different subjects, different materials, different tools, and be able to utilize those things sooner in life. I have a question.
What?
Is sand a solid or liquid?
A liquid. Solid.
Under the water. What about the leaf?
At Educare, we knew STEM was a yes for us because we wanted the kids to have some of that language and those experiences of STEM practices.
Let's go.
A few years ago, we received a grant opportunity to bring STEM to Educare New Orleans for the 4-year-olds, and we jumped on it. It began with teachers and supervisors going through an extensive training. We found that the kids loved it. It wasn't over their heads. It was very age appropriate. Several other classes now implement STEM in the classroom. So STEM.
And I'm going to tell you, if you don't already see this, these are some of the most interesting activities for kids. And what really is a hesitation is it's hard for us, right? One, having to be intentional while allowing this free exploration, or setting up these situations that can be highly complex, but the students enjoy them. I did a kind of color mixing activity in my internship way before, 15 years ago. And the students kind of went crazy with it, but there were so many wonderful opportunities for them to learn about this process of scientific method. We have 2 colors. What do we think is going to happen when we mix those colors? And then we do it, we experiment, and then we see what happens, and we say, oh, so this is the conclusion. These are our results. There's a lot of fun to be had. Let's keep watching.
It happens in the classroom through play, actually through the centers.
At such a young age, they're at a stage where they want to see, they want to feel, they want to touch, they want to know what it is. Whatever they're playing with, basically finding a way to incorporate those science, technology, engineering, and math questions with blocks, sand and water, all of the different centers that we have in the classroom. You're gonna build your castle too? Adrian loves to build, and he's really thoughtful about where he's gonna put what. He was building a structure and it kept falling over, and he was like, you know what? I'm gonna move this structure over to the wall. Why do you need the wall?
So it can't fall down.
So that it won't fall down. Okay. The bottom is called the foundation. So did you make sure your foundation was sturdy first? We gave them that vocabulary of foundation and stability and gravity. What's making that big, heavy, tall block stay on top of that little small block? So when you put the smaller pieces, Adrian. Come out, come get it, Adrian. What happened? It started to fall.
I do love this. Another example of the child is like, wait a second, this isn't working. Problem solving, and says, wait, I'm going to build it over there and see what happens. Now I'm sure he's going to, try to think of another way to build it.
Why do you think it started to fall?
We can't see building.
Because of this one? So this one made it what? Lighter or heavier?
Heavier.
Heavier. So you think you can't put heavy pieces on the edge or it's going to fall?
No, up top.
All right, there you go. Also, we had Zoomy set up, and Zoomy's really fun.
Zoomy, because he zooms in and gets really close and lets us look at things really closely. Okay? So, each of you will get a chance to use Zoomy.
We were introducing a digital microscope. We had different types of fruits, vegetables. Prior to my STEM training, I probably would have demonstrated for the kids how to use it. I would have used it for them and just let them watch.
So you can see all the little fibers and threads in the...
It can be engaging by allowing the kids to just play, stepping back, observing, encourage them to see how that tool was helpful to them just based on what they were doing as opposed to me doing it for them or me telling them what to do.
Prior to having STEM training, I was like, what is going to be the purpose of this? These children are going to be able to understand this. Here I am, a big grown lady, and I still can't understand certain science concepts. Once we mix the water in with the cornstarch, is it going to be a solid or is it going to be a liquid? It's really interesting to me that they're able to grasp whatever we give them. What about you, Kason? Kason, do you think it's going to be a solid or a liquid? When I was growing up, they didn't give us many opportunities to do hands-on activities when it came to science. I think if I would have had those opportunities that I'm giving my students, that I would have been able to understand it more and be more interested in it. So it's really fun to be able to explore those things with my students now.
No, very solid.
None of this is very surprising to me, right? This is all, that's kind of a very well orchestrated way of incorporating something that's typically less play oriented into a play-based setting. Here, this is a video, so we had STEM in what is a more typical preschool classroom. Here, I wanted to this is something I would do, but I like having the video. I don't have the children to work with right now. But here is a teacher just like me, early childhood special education, who's meeting new students and using play as a vehicle to, one, get to know them, develop a relationship, and then learn how to build on skills. So let's watch this one. Oh, there's the Maria Montessori quote.
Play is, I think at this age, everything. And in particular with students who have disabilities, really building that rapport with them is important. And so when I get a student, the first thing I do with them is play. I'm Jennifer Russell. I'm a PPCD teacher here at Beatty Elementary. When I meet a new child, the first thing I do is just watch close by. If they go to the block center and get the Legos, then I come and I sit next to them. At that point, the play is more just me kind of watching and narrating what's happening. Once I see what they're interested in, then...
So also, since this is kind of my field, part of the reason you're narrating is much of the time when we have children with special needs in preschool, one of the most common is we might have a student who has a language delay or is nonverbal, in which case, we're narrating so we can provide that language model that they might not have. So again, through play, we're just trying to naturally, organically find opportunities to teach skills. And we know that modeling language is an evidence-based or a best practice.
And I can join them in their play. And that may be me imitating them, doing what they're doing, building that rapport where they see that she's in on this. Okay, I got her. And when I'm playing with them, it'll become evident, pretty clear what they know and what they don't know. If I say, give me, give me the Lego. If they don't have the receptive language and the compliance, they're not going to give me that Lego.
So remember, receptive language, what we can understand. Compliance, I don't like, more following one-step directions, right? To me, it would be, can this student follow one-step directions, not so much compliance based.
So I know right there, following directions is tricky for this person. Playing with them and assessing where they're at through play then helps me play with them with a purpose. So once I know what they don't know, then in play I can start targeting what they need to know. And we start working on very specific skills. So I can have the coolest toy in the world and have a lesson planned out of, this is what I'm going to work on with this toy. But if they're not interested, you will get nothing. And you have to have the flexibility to be able to go where the child's going, quickly assess what can I do with this toy, and work on that.
So that's just a brief kind of video of how one special needs or early childhood special education teacher, I'm not sure what PPCD, all of these, there's so many different terms. In North Carolina, EC is the teacher, and that's a special education. They say, I'm an EC teacher. That's an exceptional children. That's what that means. So some places don't even use special education. That aside, that's very true that when we are working with children with special needs, the easiest and most effective way to teach or foster skill development is just through play and their interest. More often than not, because there are children with special needs, it's going to be more difficult to gain their attention without that, because they might have delays that make it more difficult for them to focus, right? All right, let's move on. So there are kind of stages of play, or yeah, and it might be linear, but for the most part, children move through these different stages. So we have solitary play. That's just when a child is playing alone, right? Most common with our babies, but really because they are babies and they're just learning to explore the world. Onlooker play. Now, typically this child here who's sitting alone would probably be playing, well, it could be engaged with something else, but is also looking at the play as opposed to engaging. Parallel play, this is one when we're talking about children with autism or a disorder or a difference that's based in a social difference. It's very common that we might have children who can parallel play but struggle to make that next step. And that's when they're playing alongside and they might use some of the same materials, but for the most part, their play sectioned off. And then we have associative play, when children might be playing beside each other, sharing materials, but they're not necessarily working on the same goal. So here you see this girl's scooping. She's kind of just sitting and watching, but she's beside her. I think she has her hand on some materials. But really what we're always kind of in early childhood classrooms, if you are in a preschool, what you're hoping you see is cooperative play. When children play with each other, have clear roles and objectives. So here we have children working together. Now this girl seems to be outside of it, but these two boys, or what look to be boys, are working using the same materials together, and it makes me wonder, are they building a structure? So that's what you're looking for. You're looking for children working together to create something or to engage in a game, maybe. So for me, my students, my last 2 years were constantly building structures. And it became when we run it, because so often there aren't enough materials for everyone to build their own. And so I would constantly suggest, scaffold, model, let's try to create one thing together. And I would try to find different ideas to incorporate. If I noticed they really like to play with cars, then I might say, can we make a garage? Can we make a racetrack? Can we make something together where we can use both the blocks and the cars? But like that teacher in the earlier video said, it's changing. It might not be the interest of the kids. One of the great parts about having a project-based classroom, my first project-based classroom was an auto shop. One, because I did have a predominantly male, at least biologically male classroom, and many of those boys were very interested in cars. And it seemed clear to me that that was going to be and not just them, but there were also some of my girls who were interested. And so in the dramatic play center, that became the auto body shop. And one of my I can't remember if it was a student or TA, actually donated one of those large cars that kids can drive, so that that could be like the car they were repairing. And often you'd see kids working together to repair the car. That's great cooperative play. There's also different categories of play, and this is why the stages is difficult, because you can see either of these at different ages. Here, I'm actually going to show you, oh gosh, you can see all of my, I thought I was already logged in, my apologies. I want to show you what I have added to Blackboard here. So let's go, this is our child growth and development. Make sure I put it here. Under week 7, you will see here this categories of play hierarchy. Open that document. I find this to be extremely helpful. Now, I wish I could say I created this. I have been part of a research study that has been developing an intervention based on play and social communication for children with autism. And one of the ways that we support teachers is by creating this document that creates a very clear delineation, or kind of clear definition, of each of these categories and what it might look like. Let me do this so you can see. So here you have exploratory, and we have some very specific examples. Child picks up and looks at toys. So this could be a block. Child picks up, looks at, puts down block. Here. So that would be that's E1, which means that's kind of the earliest skill we might see. 2 would be child plays with toys using both hands together, which means they're exploring it. So they might push buttons, roll a ball, they might gather blocks, turn pages of a book. Those are all examples of what's kind of that next step in exploratory. And then child plays with one toy in 3 or more different ways. It kind of stair step moves in the same fashion. What's helpful, and for those of you who are specifically interested in special education, it's helpful in creating goals. When we're creating goals for our students, we want them to be appropriate. So here we have an age level, but also, regardless of age, when we have students who do not follow typical development, we really just have to look at their skills. And so here I might say, oh, this child is at relational. They can take toys apart, but they're not yet able to put several toys together in specific ways or in simple ways. So if I see that, I might say, okay, so a goal for this child is child puts toys together in simple ways. And I would probably make that even more measurable, meaning child puts toy together in 1 to 2 ways, which means, drops blocks in cup, puts lid on container. But that's the kind of intention, is to help you start to think about what might be appropriate goals, and then where is this child at? I find this particular graphic or this form very helpful because it does highlight all the way up to 30 months, what do we expect? And here you'll say that the last piece when we're talking about, right, symbolic play, which is the ideal, child expands pretend play with other people. That could very easily be turned into an objective using 2 of 3 different components, right? Either new roles, new theme, and/or fantasy roles. So again, this is available right in Blackboard here under the categories of play hierarchy. Hopefully that makes it a little bit easier, but just quickly, when we're talking about these different play, exploratory is just how it sounds. We are exploring how these toys work using our senses. Relational is more understanding how these toys work with relation to what we can do with them. Functional is using the toy as it was intended. So cause and effect toys are very functional. So using a pretend, like you might be pretending to use a spoon to eat, but that's functional because you're using it as intended. Whereas if we're talking about symbolic play, you might be using the spoon to feed a doll. Then you're bringing multiple things to life. Yeah, so symbolic means we're starting to include different non-lifelike things and pretending they're lifelike, or we're using a block or something in a way that it wasn't intended. It is a symbol of something. The most common one I would hear is using a block as a phone. A block was not intended to be a phone, but you often might see a child put it up to their ear, pretending to be a phone. That is more complex symbolic play because they're using the object not how it was intended. All right. Well, what? Where is my PowerPoint? Oh my goodness. Did I accidentally? I did not think I had done that. All right, back to it. So categories of play. So here, we've also covered play with certain theorists. Let me move this. I hate this thing. Theorists in play. So we have Piaget kind of talked a little bit about this, sensory motor. Birth to 2, children learn through their various senses. Then we have pre-operational, where you should see children to engage in more pretend play. And then we move beyond. Here, we're not even talking about play more. We're talking about problem solving and cognitive skills. So we start to engage in logical thought process, and we engage in more complex problem solving. So the problem we saw in the video on STEM, we saw that child was like, my building is falling, let's solve it. There could be, my building is falling. Actually, I'm trying to think about how my building is falling and there's not enough room. So what do I do? There might be multiple issues that need to be solved. And then the next step, again, understanding abstract thoughts. So things that are not, you can't see, you can't touch, you can't feel. All you can do is think about them, which is so hard for our children with autism. Anyway, and then Vygotsky talked about Vygotsky was big on how these cognitive skills can only develop within social situations. And that's basically learning problem solving is within this social context. That's how we learn. Brought in scaffolding, which could involve peers, but the adults might be involved in guiding those effective social emotional skills. And then this focus on socio-dramatic play, so engaging in pretend play with your peers, because not only are you engaging in this more symbolic play, but also you're learning about the rules of social interaction. So use of materials to promote play and learning. So if you are in the early childhood program, you're going to learn this a lot. Materials should be developmentally appropriate. So if you're working with a young child, then your physical materials should be of the right size. They should match the interests of a child of that age or developmental age and the style of that child. So here we have kind of a middle schooler who is engaged in more inquiry-based learning, which is appropriate, but we have a younger child who's being guided in maybe writing. Then we have materials that allow for creativity, exploration. A lot of what we saw in that STEM video showed us that creativity exploration. So science activities, activities where we get to compare things using measurement, or just seeing what happens. So this is what happens when we rub balloons. Or it could just be inspecting a new maybe some new stones or rocks or shells that were found on the playground. We want to have as many of these as possible that are open-ended because we don't want there to always be an answer to questions. There aren't. We want students to feel comfortable exploring things without there being any punitive responses for incorrect or correct answers. So they should reflect the unique culture and capabilities of the children. So as many of you might know, NACE accredited early childhood centers need to have materials that reflect all ages, abilities, ethnicities, cultures, races. So that means we need to see people who might be in a wheelchair. We need to see people of color. We need to see people who clearly demonstrate or items that are reflective of a particular culture, race, ethnicity. Here we have exploration of kind of a specific culture. Someone brought in some more traditionally African materials for students to explore. And then lastly, and this is obvious, they should be appealing, they should be durable and easy to clean. So these types of materials, plastic materials, are probably the best. As much as we hate plastics, they're easier to clean. If they're wood, they might get warped, although there are lots of wooden materials. Here, I am definitely someone who loves to use things that are natural, organic. So if we can go outside and collect materials, those are appealing because they're things that children see all the time and they don't usually get the opportunities to explore. And maybe they might not be as durable or easy to clean, but they will be, if you don't use them again, that won't be the worst thing because they weren't purchased, right? And then foam materials, very durable. You're in an early childhood classroom, you do have to have a lot of different blocks, but using foam materials when you're with young children to prevent people from getting hurt. So what I would like you to think about after watching this, and I'm going to continue, play as such, this is kind of an introduction to play in early childhood. Play is such an important concept in child growth and development that it's going to be interweaved or intertwined to the rest of my lessons moving forward. Here's what I would like you to do. Oh shoot, I forgot the timer, but that's okay. I'm going to set a different timer. I would like you to, well, let me do this quickly. First, what materials do you have or would you have available for play? So manipulatives. When I think of manipulatives, I don't just think of like counters, those little bears that are in every classroom. I think of just things that children can use with their hands. So that could be a sensory table. That also could be the block area. What center is your favorite? I'm going to be real with you. I'm a gross motor kid. I like being involved. I love the building center. So the building center was my favorite. Imagine your ideal classroom. What materials would you include to encourage or foster play? What types of activities would you offer to students? So I want you to ponder these questions and then open a Word document. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my 2-minute timer. Oh my gosh. I've done this before and it didn't show up. All right. So I'm going to start this timer and then I'm going to go back to the prompt, but basically you're writing your ideal classroom and what you would provide for play materials. 2-minute essay. Here. Back to the slide. So right now you're writing your 2-minute essay and you're going to submit that to the assignments page. This is the important part. All right, 50 seconds. All right. All right, timer's done. I thought that it would have a timing sound, but it didn't. All right, so I also wrote, you're always welcome to use your speech to a speech to text doc. Oh, whoops. I went back by accident. All right, so that's all I have. I'm trying to make my lecture shorter. Please complete your exit ticket after closing this video. It should be posted to Blackboard. And that's all I got. Thank you.